Did you know picnics used to be a way for the rich to flex on the poor? Pretty dark, right? Today we think of picnics as romantic, charming, casual events for everyone. They can be personalized to make anyone happy. Family friendly? Sure, make some memories. Adults only, with champagne and snuggles? Absolutely an option. Lazy? Lounge all afternoon on a blanket in the warm sun. Active? Run around flying kites and playing croquet. You can make a picnic fit your lifestyle, your energy level, your relationship status. You can make it fit you. Picnics are perfect. The concept of intentionally leaving the comfort of indoors, packing a meal to go, and enjoying it with friends in nature is nothing new, of course. But the practice and the purpose behind it has changed dramatically over time. The first true picnics were medieval hunting feasts, basically an opportunity to show off how rich you were by forcing servants to lug furniture and food into the woods for an elaborate feast while you ran around pretending to hunt something. They were luxurious events filled with too much everything and not enough anything at the same time. And that continued the general theme of picnics for a while, basically an opulent social stunt for the privileged few. It wasn't until the 1700s that what we think of as a picnic today really began to take form. And like many culinary traditions, we have the French to thank. Of course, the French didn't invent the picnic. Every culture has its own version. But the name picnic actually comes from the French phrase pique-nique, meaning to pick a little or peck at something small. And they can also be credited with the economic class of people that can enjoy a picnic. Interestingly enough, up to the 18th century, parks were limited to upper-class, titled citizens only. But then came the French Revolution, and lower-class citizens immediately packed their baguettes and a bottle of wine to lunch in those lovely gardens, if only out of well-deserved spite, which is the most French way of handling things I have ever heard. And with that, the inclusive, rustic picnic was born. They went through phases of formality again, with Regency-era authors like Jane Austen painting them as romantic, idyllic affairs with pastoral scenes filled with flowers and picnic baskets brimming with delicious foods shared intimately under shade trees. But soon, another revolution disrupted the evolution of picnics, the Industrial Revolution. Urbanization and the convenience of modern kitchen tools made staying home to eat convenient and practical. But picnics, surprisingly, survived the cultural shift. In fact, the idea of escaping into nature to enjoy a quiet meal was even more attractive than before. Even during the Great Depression, picnics held their appeal. Families could turn a simple, inexpensive meal into a fun event with almost no added cost. Then, as cars allowed for farther and easier travel, many families made picnics in the park a weekly tradition. And today, picnics are just as popular, with nearly every culture and region developing some form of picnic tradition. There are modern, elaborate gourmet affairs and ancient, elegant traditions. Or there are rustic, family-friendly events with lawn games and ham sandwiches. That's what's so magical about picnics. There are no rules or requirements. They barely demand food. A bottle of champagne and a blanket is a picnic in my book. They are for everyone and can happen anywhere. Some of the most romantic picnics are as far away as your own backyard. And some of the most memorable picnics get rained out, forcing you to snuggle under a blanket rather than sit on one. There's no wrong way to do it. Just don't forget to enjoy yourself. I almost lost sight of that when I decided to plan one. When I started putting together my picnic with my partner, I searched for cliche, fancy picnic recipes like salmon croquettes and cucumber sandwiches. It sounded fun to make, but my partner hates cucumbers, so I realized I was making a menu for all the wrong reasons. Picnics should be authentic. If you're someone who loves to craft beautiful, elaborate menus with elegantly presented food, go for it. I do too sometimes, and picnics can be as fancy as any ballroom event. But that's not what I wanted mine to be. You know what I wanted? Like really wanted? Corn dogs. Yeah, simple, salty sweet, crunchy delicious corn dogs. See, I missed fair season last year, and by fair season, I mean fair food season. I was 8 months pregnant during our local fair, so the crowds and the walking just wasn't an option. But that means I missed out on funnel cakes and caramel apples and fried everything, so I have been craving a fresh, homemade corn dog like mad. So when I came across a recipe in one of my community cookbooks, I knew exactly what I would make for my romantic picnic in the park. And as a side, I love finding recipes that disguise veggies. We actually both love veggies, but anytime you can sneak them into a dish that's just as tasty as potatoes, I'm in. So I'm making this recipe I found for zucchini patties. They're deliciously cheesy with a crunchy cracker crust, and I'm updating the technique a bit by using an air fryer instead of pan frying like the recipe calls for, since I'm already deep frying the corn dogs. And for a crunchy, zesty addition, I'm pickling green beans. A classic side, they're perfect for a picnic since they're easier to eat than a salad, but add the same flavor profile to a meal. And to drink, well, it's not a romantic picnic without some sort of wine. And what's more romantic than champagne? So to make it fit with my rustic menu, I'm going to make a cherry champagne fizz using my favorite maraschino cherries from Luxardo. And for dessert, my partner isn't picky, but they always pick the lemon dessert when it's an option. So I'm going to make a vintage picnic classic, everyone's favorite lemon bars. So with that as my menu, I'd love for you to join me for my version of a perfect picnic lunch for two, using authentic recipes from, as always, vintage community cookbooks. But I am super curious to know what your favorite picnic foods are, so be sure to let me know in the comments below. So before we get cooking, let's talk about the community cookbooks I will have the pleasure of cooking from. I'm going on a picnic. Nothing fancy, just an authentically romantic picnic for two with tasty treats. Crispy corn dogs, zesty pickled green beans, and crunchy zucchini patties, finished off with classically delicious lemon bars. And all of those amazing recipes were found inside these two vintage community cookbooks. So I wanted to share them with you. First is this humble gem, favorite recipes from our Best Cooks cookbook. Pretty generic title and a generic cover. In fact, you may come across this exact cover and title if you're looking through vintage community cookbooks. That's for a good reason. In the 70s and 80s, community cookbooks had become such popular fundraisers for clubs and causes. Publishing companies popped up to cater to the need. They would provide stock covers and standard inserts, as well as printing and editing services for clubs, taking a lot of the burden off the clubs. It was a win-win for all involved, allowing small clubs that otherwise couldn't handle the job of printing and binding and artwork and editing. Keep in mind, depending on the decade, they would have had to use typewriters and hand binding and all sorts of cumbersome and expensive processes. Was something lost in the process? Yeah, maybe a little. Artwork was less folky and kitsch. Intros were less personal, but the trade-off was higher quality printing, better organization, and all of these great pages filled with tips, tricks, and weight measurements and conversions. So I don't mind one bit. And you can still get an idea of what organization the recipes are from by checking the first page of the inside. In this case, it was the Canby Mothers Club. I couldn't find any records for the club, and I don't think they're still in existence, but I did find one post in the local newspaper from 1979 that mentions the club, quote, wants to invite all the women of the community to a luncheon at the Canby Fire Hall. After the luncheon, bingo will be played. Babysitting will be provided. There will be no added cost for either the luncheon or the babysitting, end quote. So I love to think about how this cookbook helped pay for lovely little free lunches with babysitting and bingo. And the second cookbook I will be cooking from is the Rock Creek Mobile Home Park cookbook. This is one of my favorite cookbooks, and I cook from it all the time. It's an example of the complete opposite end of the spectrum from the first. It's completely hand-typed from front to back, hand-drawn artwork contributed by members of the community, and even little poems and quotes from neighbors. The cover is hand laminated and manually bound. It's a true labor of love and everything I adore about community cookbooks. As you can see, it took no less than 8 women to assemble the contents, and every chapter has artwork contributed by a different artist. And look how cute it is. A mobile home park is a genius group for a community cookbook. This park in particular is a retirement community, and I don't know if they were raising money to improve their park, or maybe they just wanted to do something fun to share their favorite recipes with each other as a simple act of neighborly togetherness. Whatever their motivations, I'm so grateful they did. So thank you so much, Canby Mothers Club and Rock Creek Mobile Home Park. I treasure your recipes, and I really look forward to enjoying them at my picnic. If you happen to come across any of these humble little paperback cookbooks, please don't overlook them. They are treasure troves of authentic home cooking, time capsules of historic recipes, and they should be appreciated right alongside the glossiest hardback Celebrity Chef cookbook. For now, I'm going to get cooking for my picnic. They're like a salad, a pickle, and a veggie all at once, a multi-tool of a side dish. Pickled, grilled green beans are the perfect veggie for my upcoming picnic because they are a veggie side that's easier to eat than a salad. It has that same vinegary, zesty flavor profile, and you're still munching on a healthy veggie. Zelda Malloy shared her recipe in the Vintage Community Cookbook Favorite Recipes from Our Best Cooks cookbook, and I came across it when I was deciding what to serve for my upcoming picnic. I knew it would pair well with corn dogs and zucchini patties. They're crunchy, zesty, spicy, and fresh, loaded with flavor, and easy to eat even without utensils, which is important when you're eating on the ground. I wanted something like a salad, but salads can be difficult to pack and serve, and dressings are tough to transport. Plus, salads can be awkward to eat. They're super easy to make, and they keep well in the fridge, so you'll have more for later. The recipe gives instructions for actual canning, water bath, the whole thing. But I just used a big jar and keep mine in the fridge, so no need to go through all that if you don't want to. So here's how I made mine. Before you get started, pack your green beans in a jar or jars of your choice. I love these giant swing top jars, so that's what I used. You can use several smaller jars if you prefer, totally up to you. Once that's all ready, combine the vinegar and the water in an enameled pot, or any pot that's safe to boil vinegar in. Most importantly, not raw cast iron. I use my stove enameled Dutch oven that you'll see me talk about a ton. If you're interested, I will add a link in the description to one of my other videos where I talk all about how much I love it and why. Then add salt and bring it to a boil. As soon as it boils, remove it from the heat. Now add the spices to your beans. The recipe calls for garlic, whole red peppers, and dill. I added a bay leaf since the tannins keep things crunchy, but it's totally optional. Finish with cayenne pepper. If you're using multiple jars instead of one big one, distribute your spices evenly with 1 clove of garlic, 2 red peppers, and half a teaspoon cayenne in each jar. Now you're ready to pour that hot vinegar brine over the beans. Be careful and go as slowly as you need to. Don't worry if you have any left over. The recipe gives no guidance on how many green beans you'll need. So if you have liquid left over, it's not a problem. Or if like me and you're a little short on liquid, just boil up a little bit more. It's equal parts vinegar and water with about 2.5 teaspoons of salt for every cup of liquid. So if you need about a cup more liquid, it would be a 1/2 cup water, 1/2 cup vinegar, and 2.5 teaspoons salt. Easy enough. So I will keep them in the fridge until I am ready to pack up for my picnic. And when I do pack my picnic, I will be using some super cute vintage picnic baskets, which I would love to show you. Is there anything more iconically charming than a vintage picnic basket? They're so cute. They evoke everything I love about vintage kitchenware. They're well made, adorable, and functional. I have several and can't resist buying any I find that are a good deal. Outside of toting a picnic lunch, they are great for general storage. I actually keep my kitchen towels in this one. And this one I use as a little toy bin in my living room. And this one, I actually keep my cleaning supplies in this side and my cleaning towels on that side. They're great for all sorts of things. Farmers markets, carrying food to friends' houses for dinner parties, organizing closets, anything really. Don't just limit them to picnics because, let's be honest, you probably don't go on a ton of picnics, and they deserve better than being stashed away, serving no purpose until your once-a-year novelty outing. But this week, I'm going on a picnic, so they are going to get used for the real thing. And I wanted to show you just a few examples of the types of vintage picnic baskets out there. First is this classic example, and the one you're probably used to seeing the most. Can't go wrong. They fit a ton of stuff. If you have a big group, a long drive, and a short walk to the site, this is the basket for you. Then there's something smaller, like this one. Isn't it the cutest? I'm obsessed with it. It's so cute it could be a purse. The same maker has one that looks like a watermelon slice. So adorable. It's great for smaller picnics for two. Doesn't fit a ton, but it's nice and light, so it's easier to carry. I use it for a second basket for extra large picnics. You can pack the blanket and food in the bigger one and utensils and plates in this one. Works great. Then there's one like this. It's actually my favorite and I use it the most. It's called a baguette basket and it's from France. It is designed to hold a bottle of wine in this slot and a baguette in the other slot. Isn't it great? And it's very well made and sturdy. I use it all the time for going to friends' houses since I can bring a bottle and something I cooked and I don't have to worry about it rolling around in the car. There are lots of other picnic baskets. I would love to add a pie safe to my collection. But no matter the shape or the size, they are a fun and useful addition to your kitchen. So if you have a vintage picnic basket, please share. I would love to see it. And do you have any creative uses for your picnic basket when you're not picnicking? Now, back to cooking, or I'll never get to the park. Anytime I can sneak more veggies on my plate, I'm in. I thought zucchini patties would be just a basic side dish that would offer a bit more nutrition than potatoes, but I was shocked by how delicious they were. Packed with cheesy goodness, a ton of flavor from herbs and spices, and a delicious crunchy cracker crust. They could hold their own as a vegetarian main dish. They would make an amazing veggie burger or wrap, and I think kids would love them. They're easy to make and surprisingly attractive. The recipe calls for them to be pan-fried in butter, but mine came out beautifully in the air fryer. Another plus for healthy eating. They're gooey, warm, straight out of the oven, but just as tasty at room temperature, so they'll pack well for the picnic. No matter where or how you enjoy them, they'll become a family favorite. So I am so grateful Gladys Lentz shared them in her community cookbook, so I get the opportunity to add them to the list of my regular favorites. So let me show you how to make them. They are super simple. All you need to start is grated zucchini. To the zucchini, add shredded cheese. The recipe recommends sharp cheddar, so that's what I used, but you can substitute with all sorts of cheeses. Next, add celery flakes. I had never heard of celery flakes before, and they are just what they sound like, flakes of dehydrated celery. I didn't have any, and I couldn't find it at my local store, but fortunately, you can use celery seed instead. Celery seed is much stronger though, so use about a quarter of the amount of seed to substitute for flakes. I actually used celery salt since that's what I had on hand, and I just cut out adding any more salt. It worked great. Next, add an egg and a minced onion, then garlic and salt. The recipe calls for salt here, but I held off since I used the celery salt. Last, it calls for lemon pepper. I have a lemon tree, so I added the zest of one lemon and some black pepper instead. Tasted delicious. Mix that all up thoroughly. As you can see by all the swaps I made, it's one of those recipes you can easily adapt and make your own with what you have on hand. The best recipes always are. Once it's thoroughly mixed, crack and whisk an egg into a wide dish. Fill another wide dish with crumbs of some sort. I used Ritz cracker crumbs since I had some, but almost any will do. Breadcrumbs will work great. Even something as basic as saltines would be tasty, whatever you prefer. Form the zucchini mix into balls in really any size you like, depending on how you enjoy them. Squeeze a bit of the moisture out so they stick together, but not too much, just enough that it forms a loose ball. Drop it in the egg, coating both sides, and then into the crumbs. They'll be a bit loose, but the crumb coating makes them much easier to handle. Shape them into patties and then transfer them to a parchment paper lined baking sheet. Repeat until all the zucchini mix is used. The recipe calls for them to be pan fried, but I air fried them for 20 minutes at 400 degrees and they came out perfectly. The cheese was so gooey and melty, and the crunchy crust was the perfect texture. You can eat them straight, or I served mine with a lemon dill sauce that added another layer of flavor and dressed them up a bit. They'll be absolutely perfect for my picnic, so I will pack them up while I finish the rest of my food. Have you ever used a Tiffin box? If you're not familiar, this is what they look like. It's my favorite way to pack for picnics, and I highly recommend them. Mine's vintage, but there are tons of modern versions, and they really haven't changed at all over the decades. So if you find one at the thrift store, snag it. I think I got mine at the flea market. They're absolutely brilliant. I think they were originally used in South Asia to pack lunches. They're not the cutest things, but they are nearly indestructible, and scratches and dents just add character. Easy to clean, easy to carry, and easy to serve food. They're simply perfect, and I absolutely love mine. Mine has 5 layers, which is awesome because you can separate different foods into each layer. Serving is a breeze since you can just unstack and set them right out on the table, or picnic blanket in my case, and they hold a ton. So this size can hold enough food for a whole family. Plus, there's usually a layer available for napkins and utensils. Some of the fancier ones have those flip-lock latches, but the older ones latch like this, which I prefer because they pretty much will never break. So modern or vintage, you cannot go wrong with a Tiffin box. So now I am going to get back to cooking for my picnic. Everyone's favorite dessert. Okay, maybe not everyone's favorite, but who doesn't love old-fashioned lemon bars? Buttery shortbread crust topped with light, lemony custard. It's the perfect way to end my picnic in the park. So I searched every vintage cookbook that I own looking for the perfect recipe. And of course, every single cookbook had a version. Interestingly enough, it was pretty much the same recipe repeated again and again. So I guess that means the perfect lemon bar recipe was perfected long ago, which is no surprise. I chose Juanita Bowden's recipe because she included lemon zest, and since I like my lemon bars extra lemony, I thought hers would be best. And it absolutely was. Simple, easy to make, and the ultimate crowd pleaser. Juanita's lemon bars will never fail. So let's get to making them. The first step will be making the shortbread crust. Start by creaming butter in an electric mixer. The recipe is pretty sparse on instructions, which is pretty common in vintage recipes, but based on experience, I think it's best to make sure the butter is well creamed before adding powdered sugar. Whip it up a bit more before removing it from the mixer and adding flour. Mix the flour until blended, but don't worry if the dough is very crumbly and dry. It's supposed to be. Transfer the dough to a casserole dish and press the dough evenly across the dish. You're going to bake the crust by itself for 15 to 20 minutes. While it bakes, we will get the custard ready. Lightly beat eggs in a large mixing bowl and then add lemon juice and zest. Give it a quick stir and then add flour, baking powder, and sugar. Mix everything together very well. The crust will be lightly golden brown around the edges, but not fully baked. So don't worry about testing it. Just pull it from the oven and pour the custard right over the hot crust. Pop it back in the oven for about 25 minutes. Lemon bar baking has to be one of the best smells in the world, so enjoy. Then you're done. Just that easy. After it cools, dust the top with powdered sugar for that iconic lemon bar look. If you dust it when it's hot, the steam might dissolve the powdered sugar, so make sure you wait. I am going to pack some up for my picnic, but I'm snagging a corner piece or two before I leave. Do you like the gooey centerpieces or the chewy edges like me? All set? Everyone's favorite granny chic dessert is all packed up and ready for our picnic. And speaking of granny chic picnics, let's talk about picnic blankets. I love vintage blankets. All kinds. Wool ones, crocheted ones, flannel ones, all of them. Even when they're in terrible shape, I grab them up at the thrift store because they make great pet blankets. So it goes without saying that my picnic blanket is vintage. This is the one that I chose to go to the park with me. It may not be a traditional picnic blanket, but I chose it for a few reasons, some of which are factors you should consider if you're in the market for a vintage picnic blanket. First is the material it's made of. This one may look like cotton or wool, but it's actually acrylic yarn. I love natural fibers, but acrylic washes well, and the colors stay vibrant. So for rougher use, acrylic is a smart choice. I love wool blankets. I have several, and truthfully, wool would be the best choice if it's an option. There's a reason army blankets and trapper blankets are made from wool. It's tough and it's naturally water wicking, which means it dries very quickly. And did you know wool blankets actually sort of self-clean? Yeah, they shed dirt. Pretty amazing. That said, they can also be worth a pretty penny. My personal favorite, this gorgeous Swedish wool blanket is worth like $300. Did I pay that? No way, I got it for like $4 at the thrift store. But no matter how practical and tough it is, there's no way I'm throwing it in the dirt. It stays in my living room and the dogs aren't even allowed to lay on it. As opposed to this adorable acrylic blanket that's worth about $30. So up to you. Is a wool Hudson Bay trapper blanket a great picnic blanket? Yeah. Would I use it as one? No way. But if you're bougie like that, go for it. They're actually pretty practical. And one more recommendation before you even lay out your blanket. Consider doubling up your layers. I was lucky enough to find this neat thing at the thrift store the other day, the Neat Sheet, with 101 uses.
The Neat Sheet ground cover, ready for anything.
It's just a water repellent sheet that's meant to be used outdoors. So I'll lay it under my cute blanket to keep it clean and stay dry. If you're lucky enough to find something like this, awesome. If not, you have options. Painter's tarps, like this one, are great. They aren't waterproof, but they keep dirt away and they add some cushion. I think I got this one for like $9 at Harbor Freight, and I use it for everything. If you're feeling crafty, you can make it waterproof with a beeswax blend, but it works great just as it is. So that's my strategy. Use a cheap, easy to wash blanket, then use something water resistant and tough to keep things neat and dry. What are your thoughts? Would you use an expensive wool blanket or something less tough but cheaper to replace? Now it's time to get back to cooking, so join me to fry up some crispy corn dogs. When did we stop making corn dogs from scratch? They're so much better and cheap, all around superior. I have been craving an old-fashioned fresh fried corn dog, so a picnic was the perfect excuse to make one. I know, not exactly the trendiest or even the classiest food, but it has to be one of the tastiest. So when I found a recipe for homemade corn dogs, I knew exactly what I wanted to make for my romantic picnic. Hey, romance looks different to everyone, and if salmon croquettes and cucumber sandwiches are romantic to you, go for it. For me, a battered fried hot dog is super romantic, so don't judge. Velma McCrary shared her recipe for crispy corn dogs in her community's cookbooks, and I am so glad she did. They are very easy to make, but there are a few tricks, and I get that deep frying can be a little intimidating and sometimes impractical. So I'm going to show you 2 different ways to make them that I think you'll like. First is the easy to share corn dog bite. No need to worry about running out of skewers or having a large enough frying pan. You can whip them up very quickly, and they even freeze well for later. And last will be my personal favorite, an oven-baked corn dog that uses one of the more obscure pieces of vintage cast iron that I own. the adorably unique crispy corn stick pan. One recipe cooked 2 ways, both delicious and super easy. So first, let's make the batter. First, we combine all the dry ingredients. So flour and cornmeal, then sugar, dry mustard, baking powder, and salt. Give that a mix, or better yet, a whisk until it is combined. Then we'll get the wet ingredients together. Whisk milk with 1 egg and then add melted fat. The recipe calls for shortening, but I used butter. Oil would work just as well. Now combine the wet and dry ingredients, mixing until smooth. Now that our batter is done, I recommend you pop it in the fridge while we prep the hot dogs. This step isn't in the instructions and it's totally optional, but a cold batter will stick to the hot dog better, so you may as well chill it while you get things ready. The first method we'll do is the corn dog bite. Before you cut up your hot dogs though, you'll want to make sure they are super dry, so pat them with a towel to make sure the batter will stick well. Now cut them up while you heat the oil to 375. I'm going to use avocado oil to fry mine, but you can use peanut oil or any other high heat, low flavor oil. Now grab that chilled batter and a couple of skewers. It's the easiest way to dip them in the batter and transfer them to the oil without making a mess and burning your fingers. Drop them in the hot oil, using the skewers to roll them over after a few seconds in the oil. Keep turning them until they are golden brown and transfer them to a rack to cool. I recommend only frying a few at a time. They go very quickly and take a bit of technique, so it's best not to get overwhelmed. Easy enough. The next method to consider is my favorite. I am obsessed with corn stick pans. They were used to make crispy cornbread sticks shaped like little corn cobs, and you can find them for pretty cheap at thrift stores or online. They're cast iron, and corn sticks must have been a pretty trendy thing to make back in the day because all the big iron companies made them. Griswold, Wagner, Lodge, all of them had a version. I have several. This one is the Crispy Corn Cob Jr. from Wagner. And you don't have to do just cornbread. Really, any bread, including cakes, can be baked up in these. Today, I am going to make baked corn dogs in mine, and I will show you how. First, we want to get the pan good and hot, and since it's cast iron, you can. Just pop it in the oven as you preheat it to 400 degrees. It will be ready when the oven is. While it's warming, take your hot dogs and cut them in half lengthwise and set them aside. Now take your hot corn stick pan out of the oven and rub a stick of butter in each corn until they are well coated. Now pour batter into each corn until about 3/4 full. Then place a hot dog half in each, pressing it down a bit into the batter. Now put it back in the oven to bake for about 12 to 15 minutes. All done. I let mine cool in the pan upside down to keep them nice and flat. They come out beautifully golden and crispy in an adorable corn cob shape. Perfect for a party, or in my case, a picnic. Do you need this exact corn stick pan to make these? No, of course not. It won't be as cute, but a muffin pan does work great too. So here you go. Delicious, crispy corn dogs made 2 different ways with 1 recipe. Don't want to deep fry? No problem. Want to enjoy some now and freeze some for later? Done. I am going to pack mine up for my picnic now, so I hope you enjoyed making them with me. I am so grateful Velma shared her recipe with us. I am all done cooking, so I'm going to finish packing and head to the park. If you'll join me, I will show you the cherry champagne cocktail I served with lunch. I think champagne pairs well with any meal, even corn dogs in the park. And maraschino cherries seemed like the perfect way to sweeten up an already romantic drink. So I used a splash of maraschino cherry syrup to make a delicious cocktail topped with decadent cherries. The key to it all is a quality maraschino cherry, and whatever you do, do not use those cheap neon red ones you see everywhere. I openly admit to being a bit of a cherry snob, and I won't go too far into it here, but if you would like to know more about quality maraschino cherries, then just follow me for my nerdy cherry rant. But the brand that I highly recommend is Luxardo. They actually invented the maraschino cherry, so you will not get a more authentic or delicious quality maraschino cherry for making cocktails or topping desserts. You can find them at most local grocery stores, so be sure to look for them for a better way to top your treat. It's time to enjoy my romantic picnic in the park, and I am all set up and lounged out. But several people had mentioned that the one romance killer for picnics was bugs. So I wanted to share my way that I adorably solve that problem. You've probably seen food screens before, but did you know that you can find vintage ones? Look how cute these are. Now, when you're not munching on it, you can cover your food in style. I love them. And if convenience is more important than style, there are also modern ones like these, which are easier to transport since they do collapse. They aren't ugly or anything. You can find them in cute colors like this, but they aren't quite as fabulous as the vintage ones. I got this one at a thrift store for like 10 cents, but they're cheap to begin with. I think you can find them for a couple bucks if you buy them in a pack. So vintage cuteness or modern convenience, either way, you won't be surprised when you come back from croquet to find gnats in your fruit salad. And with that, I am ready to enjoy my romantic picnic lunch, which means you have to go make your own. Thank you for joining me to appreciate these vintage recipes. I'm so grateful to these home cooks that they shared these recipes in their community's cookbooks. I hope it inspires you to save more of these spiral-bound treasures and cook more old recipes.